Good morning, everybody. Welcome back. Can we kindly give attendees just 2 minutes for more people to join before we kick off? Thank you. Good morning, everybody, and welcome back. If you've been with us through the previous session, you already know we've covered the foundations, the trade rules, licensing, compliance, and regulatory realities. Today, we move from protection to proportion. Because once you understand the rules, the real question becomes, how do you actually scale? Not in theory, not on pitch deck, but in real markets, across real African borders, with real regulators and customers, and obviously constraints. Now, section 4 is about playbooks. How fintech companies expand, how GovTech solutions engage government, how HealthTech scale responsibly, and what separates companies that attempt expansion from those that actually achieve it. By the end of today's session, you should walk away with clarity on 3 things. What sector-specific expansion really looks like, how to approach regulators as strategic partners, not obstacles, and what execution discipline is required to scale across African markets. This is not a motivational session. This is an operational session. We are here to unpack what works and what doesn't. Now, we'll run for about 90 minutes to about 120 minutes, which means each speaker would have about 25 to 30 minutes. And after each speaker, we will take a short question and answer from each speaker. We will drop a Slido link in the chat box here and also in the WhatsApp group for attendees. Please drop your questions in that slide. Please drop your question in the Slido link dropped in the chat box on here or on the WhatsApp group. As always, no question is too basic. Expansion gets complicated. All right, let's get into this. To open us up, we're starting with Fintech, one of Africa's most dynamic and regulated sectors. I am pleased to welcome Mr. Abubakar Adaji Achimugu. He is the Executive Director at eTranzact PLC. eTranzact has operated across multiple markets, navigating licensing, payment infrastructure, partnerships, and regulatory evolution in real time. Mr. Abubakar brings not just boardroom insight, but operational experience in scaling financial technology within structured regulatory environments. Mr. Abubakar, we are pleased to have you. Over to you, and thank you very much for making our time for us today. I think, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for having eTranzact. Thank you very much. It's our pleasure. And before I start, I really want to appreciate the organizers of this webinar. Here, I'm referring to the Ministry of Communications and Digital Economy, the AfCFTA, and the Office of the Nigerian Digital Communications. Because in the last couple of days, going into 2-3 weeks now, there have been loads and loads of information interchanges, talking about everything that we need to leverage on for the betterment of digital technology in Africa. So, I mean, it's a very job well done, and I'm really very glad that I'm here. But before going into the actual maybe discussions, I would quickly like to go through, look at even where we were as a country, as a continent before 2003. Because at eTranzact, we actually started, operations in terms of licensing in 2003 as a Nigerian's first multi-application and multi-channel switching platform. But before then, there were challenges. We had a country where the financial system was very manual. It was largely manual. It was fragmented and heavily dependent on cash system. With very limited interbank connectivity, and electronic payment was almost non-existent. With very few ATMs in maybe cities like Lagos and cities like Abuja. And the payment clearing and settlements were very manual. And in fact, settlement then could take as much as, a few more days depending on the location. These were the things that the founding fathers of eTranzact saw. From these experiences, they now envision a brand that will build a platform that will be very safe, that will be secured, that will now offer these services in automation forms very seamlessly. And in 2003, the company was born. eTranzact provided technology-driven transaction switching and payments processing. Today, the organization has evolved into a global brand. The company's early competitive edge came from building the switching backbone in Nigeria, which after the 2004 reforms of the central bank and the financial system in the financial services, now was able to come up with the switching solutions that enables the ATMs and POS's connectivity, card transactions routing, payment gateway services, and also build that institutional trust as a huge growth asset that has actually inspired more fintechs coming into industry within that space and building businesses to scale on trust. So eTranzact built credibility through offering these very secure transactions routing, encryptions, and fraud management systems. We've actually been able to align with with regulations and compliance with AML and CFT standards, and also enterprise-grade uptime reliability. So today we have expanded our service even beyond switching into mobile payment services, government payment solutions, merchants acquiring, value-added services, among several. Nigerian's payment landscape today evolved through reforms, licensing adjustments, and fintech competition. This we've actually been able to bring them to fore in the business that we are doing today. So today we have a vision which is actually very spot on to be the preferred integrated financial technology platform for merchants and consumers, with a clear enabling mission of enabling transactional freedom, leveraging innovative technology and exceptional people within the country and across the continent. But all these are actually sitting on our very core corporate values, which we call IROC at eTranzact. This has actually been able to help us relate to the market, work with the systems, people, both internal stakeholders and others, in ensuring that we do not only understand the market more passionately, but we are also able to service the market very well. The IROC, we call it, has integrity as a major focal line there. Talking about system integrity, people integrity, process integrity, even market knowledge integrity as well. Then, of course, you have innovation, which is very primary to what we do here. And there must be mutual respect amongst the internal stakeholders and also while relating with the external stakeholders. Ownership is very key. Ownership of the systems that we operate and the markets that we see and the country that we have that we must serve. Then the focus is on the customer, so customer centricity. And generally collaborating, with all the resources that we have, going into partnerships and ensuring that we take, the digital infrastructure to the next level. So at a time, we must know this is actually sitting on all the various switching licenses that we now have, because we've actually been able to build more like enhanced security and governance standards that are now taking key considerations of infrastructures that precede innovation and ensuring that we have more like the institutional integration, which creates stickiness and also high trust environments that help defend the infrastructure players that win by stability and no type. So from a cash dominance transaction, institutional switching to ecosystem enablement, we can now say potentially that we are now crossing into the continental space for infrastructure relevance and market knowledge. This we have been able to do sitting on the bouquet of licenses that we have. Today, we're a CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria's license payments platform, with the switching categories, which enables us to do online funds transfer, disbursements, and collections. Using our switching PSSP value-added and PTSSP licenses. We're actually a super fintech with a MMO license, which enables us to actually handle the agency networks that we have across the country and now down into the continent. But all these are all sitting on our switching capabilities, which ensures payment terminals, online payments, bank branch payments, value-added services, transaction routing, and also payment cards and transaction security. Identity and data is very key, and this platform also enables it. So this is much we have quite loads that we can keep saying and saying on how we have been able to refine the space and how we've actually been able to inspire followership and entries into the fintech financial space after the reforms of 2004. So we have been around this industry for over 23 years, while growing in strength and bounds, and also in market captives as well. So on our track record locally, we've actually been able to do over 103 trillion in terms of the throughput that we had in the last financial year, with over 10 billion coming in transaction counts as well. Our downtime is about 99.9%. That's the uptime here. And we have a very strategic goal of not just collaborating, but ensuring that we are in viable partnership model ventures for the benefits of the industry and for the strategic goal that we have as eTranzact. So now going into the market proper, we'll be now looking at the more like an overview of the African market, where we have a market of about 1.5 billion people, with an average more like life expectancy is about 64, and over 1,500 languages with in countries in about 55 countries, and with multiple currencies that are almost about 40, I think about 40 multiple currencies. But at the same time, one major challenge that we have within the continent is as much as the fact that we have about 20% of the world population, our contribution to the global GDP is only about 5%, which actually speaks to the per capita income that we have, which varies from about $369 to about $21,900, depending on the part of the continent you are, or the country that you're speaking from, or where you are at. But we've also been able to scale trade within the continents in our own very manual way before these transformations that we're now experiencing via regional wealth, but where regional communities like the ECOWAS community of West Africa, you have the East African community, you have the South African Development Community, amongst several. But at this junction, I think we must appreciate what the African Continental Trade Free Trade Area is doing. Remember we had more like it was a landmark agreement that was established by the African Union to create a very single over 1.2 billion person market for goods and services across all the countries in Africa. You've actually been able to do quite a lot, and you've been able to push the AfCFTA Digital Trade Protocol, which is more like to create a unified African market by streamlining trade and industrialization through ethical data usage, interoperable systems, and seamless cross-border digital transactions. We really very much commend what AfCFTA is doing, and we can see that the Digital Trade Protocol actually addresses the key challenges that have actually been there, have been there within the trading community in Africa. We've had issues with digital trade inclusiveness. Quite a lot of Africans are financially excluded, maybe as a result of a lot of times maybe income, literacy, and also the inability of accessing the critical infrastructures that will now draw them out of the excluded marketplace into inclusion. We've also been able to see how you are bringing up platforms that will manage and facilitate digital trade, business and consumer trust, and also data governance, which is also very key. And that is actually where the strength of our wealth in this trade in Africa is. So we can see quite a lot of this that have been there. We've also been able to see the fact that there's need for business continuity, and also how we can also fuse, the various diversities of Africa into a block that will guarantee, a common customs, ensure that the flow of traffic, and also aggregating the opportunities for currencies, for interchanges, on goods and for goods and services. So these are actually very huge achievements that I see that you have done. So on the lessons that we have actually been able to pick as eTranzact, being a major player within the continent, and also regional partnerships and integration within African payments ecosystem, I can say that at eTranzact, we've actually been able to ensure that we have a more established interoperability within the continent. We have also been able to ensure that mostly that will be taking instances from the subsidiaries that we have within the continent. In this particular case, I'll be looking at maybe eTranzact Ghana, where we have the Ghana Interbank Payment and Settlement System and the telecommunication companies, which are now brought into and now accept and have accessibility via the platforms that we'll be able to create as well. eTranzact has successfully integrated with the Pan-African payment and settlement system, that is PAPS. And in Ghana, we've actually been able to achieve this sitting on our Excel mobile app, which actually enables instant, secure cross-border payments across over 12 countries in Africa. And this that actually helped in reducing the reliance on corresponding banking and hard currencies within the continent. eTranzact has also been able to secure, it's more like separate licenses in terms of looking at the operating frameworks that we have. We've actually been able to link cross-border rules with the identity infrastructures, creating a bridge between cross-border remittances as well, while using our digital identity and infrastructures to enable domestic financial systems participation. This has been very key. This has been very helpful. And all this has actually been aligned with the regulatory framework within the spaces that we operate. So the cross-border payments are actually very regulatory heavy. And regulatory engagements is embedded into our own partnership model. You go into locations and go with the laws, of the place, the licensing conditions of the place. So on partnerships as well, we've actually been able to see that looking at the vast number of Africans who can access the mobile phones, we've actually been able to ensure that we have that partnerships with, telcos. This is to support the unlocking of distributions and market penetrations and digital adoption as well. So telecommunication companies remain very critical with financial inclusion in Africa. We have loads of them. I mean, MTN is everywhere in Africa. Partnership with Epsil's mobile money ecosystems across the West and East Africa has actually been very helpful. We have pioneered USSD in Nigeria, and this wouldn't be possible if there was no alignment with the telcos. So partnership models, our partnership keeps evolving, with the markets that we serve, and also with the variance of the cultures, of the places that we go to, where you have multi-country switching networks in one system, cross-border wallets interoperability, regional clearing ambitions, and also public-private digital payments alliances. So eTranzact has been able to partner with government entities like the digital revenue collections, which we are doing in Nigeria. Because in Nigeria, I must say, they were actually at the front of most of the payment, within the payment space in the country, where at the former public sector area, we are majorly involved in the collections of revenues on behalf of the federal government. We do this on the treasury single accounts. We are also doing this we are also going to be doing this on the national single window. We are there with the Nigerian Revenue Services on e-invoicing and critical initiatives of government on how they can avoid leakages and ensure there is a free flow. There's a seamless process in guaranteeing the collections of taxes and ensuring that they actually meet the last mile of meeting the needs of the people. So eTranzact has been very critical, using our infrastructures, our people, using our processes in ensuring that we scale properly, within Nigeria and across the continent. But then we are actually very pleased at what the African Continental Free Trade Area is doing, especially on the digital trade and protocols. And I would like to say how we are aligning. Yes, this is a channel we are talking now, and we can say this is more like a core line on alignment. But at the same time, the digital trade protocol is shaping the future of the cross-border commerce in Africa, and we must really commend the AfCFTA for this huge initiative that is, whose impact it's beginning to more like resonate across the continent. So the Pan-African strategy as eTranzact actually prioritizes expansion into multiple African countries, ensuring compliance with financial and digital services. These are all in line with the key core corporate values that we have of integrity, of innovation, of respect, of ownership, of customer centricity, and also collaboration. So we have standardized APIs for global, for our global expansions. So eTranzact now provides global standard APIs for different types of customers to integrate into our own platforms, ensuring that there's more like compatibility across multiple switching platforms. Then what is also key for us, it's security, data governance, the KYCs, know your customer, know your customer's customer, know your business harmonizations are all very key. And these are key components for the cross-border payments, which we can say we can amplify into the AML risk, the terrorist financing risk, the sanction exposures as well, and also the FX volatility amongst others. So due to the dispute complexity, in this case, we're now looking at a continent that have people with various religion, culture, currencies, etc. It is important that we have a system with real-time AML monitoring cross-border audit trails. These will enable regulatory reporting, automation, and also will ensure that there's transparency. So the Excel app, which I said one of our subsidiaries actually is aligning with PAPS on, can actually onboard users from different countries, and it is built with the intention to scale beyond just serving a country of origin. It is for the continent. So in this aspect, you have different KYCs, different countries, but it's just one app showing real-time interoperability. That is what the Excel app does. And that is why PAPs are actually very eager in expanding the reach of this application. Then on the challenge with the multi-currency settlement engine, today in Nigeria, we have a product called Credit. It supports the Nigerian Identity Management Commission, the National Population Commission, the National Housing Fund, among several other government initiatives on collections, on identifications, etc., and also even Nigerians in diaspora. So we receive in of foreign currencies and also settle in the local currency. So the PAPS integration allows us to serve several countries even much better and to integrate our FX routing mechanism even much easier. So the plan now is to support local currency settlements to reduce foreign dependency. That is the onus that we have here for we in Africa. So on the strategies for scaling, because at this point, we are more like the emerging markets. We are still a greenfield, but the opportunities are here. Whatever we see as the challenges that we have in the continent, we are beginning to translate them into opportunities. So processing over 1 billion transactions annually and serving more than 50 million users is huge. So we have that experience that has shaped a clear blueprint for scalable and sustainable innovation. So there are some things that are very non-negotiable for us. The speed is very key. For scaling financial infrastructure in a digital economy, delayed payments destroys trust and competitiveness. From my experience of over 20 years, we know how very pivotal this is. And on simplicity, systems have to be easy to adapt to and easy to use. If systems are not intuitive, adaptive, adoption can actually be very limited. Then security is also very key. Trust is the foundation of any kind of relationship. Financial relationship, there's even relationships within the family. Trust is key. So trust is everything. When trust is lost, relationship is lost. So security is primary for us here. Then, of course, on these three, we can scale interoperable infrastructures, which will now ensure systems grow with markets rather than restrict them. So, my dear brother, I think we have quite a lot of inspiring ecosystems, stakeholders to build infrastructure there. We see what's happening across the continent. We see what Nigerian companies are doing. We're at the forefront of the digitalization within the continent. And eTranzact being, the most experienced, being the only multi-application, multi-switching channel that we have in the country, who is sitting on a platform that was built locally by Nigerians from Nigeria. And the only listed Fintech in Nigerian Stock Exchange. I can say, like a hive of bees working in a disciplined coordination, that what you are bringing in here, the AfCFTA, it's bringing African nations together in collective actions for a shared purpose. We share in your aspirations, we share in your vision, and we have our facilities and infrastructures, people who are also ready, that will transfer all our collective efforts in the contribution into the African continental prosperity. So the most important thing is we have to just be better in whatever we are doing. Business acumen is great, and understanding technology go in hand. So we have to stay updated with market trends as they evolve, as they accept, people accept technology, as they adapt to technology, and actively participate also to succeed. And also for new founders can learn from the past mistakes. There are loads of new entries and they learn quite a lot from what we have gone through. From 2023 to date is actually a long time. And I see that quite a lot of new entry, are always quick to identify the challenges that we've overcome, the problems that we had, that we've also been able to, overcome them and be where we are today to take their adventures to where they would like them to be. Then you always have to be coming to the market with something very different. Market differentiation is very key. So pivoting doesn't actually mean failure, rather it indicates that you are paying attention to the markets, adapting and providing value to the ecosystem. So the hard work must be done to avoid just merely replicating existing ideas, because the potentials are huge. The aim is to create a painkiller that people need, not just a vitamin that they may consider. So, but we have to be bold. Expect the worst outcome. So the worst outcome can be a meal, but the best may exceed their expectations. Clearly, we communicate and the needs when engaging with stakeholders, and empathy is also very key. Criticizing them won't yield back good results, but the best outcome from a healthy and motivated team is to have the mutual empathy process. So we prioritize our resources that are partnerships, human capital, and materially related, and there's trust. So at eTranzact, we've actually been able to build these 5 P's, and we've actually been able to build this on our TAWID mantra, which is to think fast, act faster. Hello, the network up there.
Yes, we can hear you, sir.
Okay, like I was saying, that we've actually been able to build all that we have been able to reach, using our core values and the mantra of TAWID. So this is all that we have here. On our TAWID, we have it telling us about thinking fast, to act faster, work smarter, and also dominate and win. So this is actually the energy that we are taking into the continent. And this is why we are eTranzact. And I'm actually very excited and very happy, and the company is pleased that we are sitting here with you after collaborating on how we can move digital trade in African Cohort. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Booker. That was very insightful and extremely practical. Now we move on to question and answer, because I know a lot of people have so much questions to ask. As we said earlier, please, if you have some questions, check for the link in the chat box or the link in the WhatsApp group to put your questions. But I'm very much aware we have some questions now. So let's move on to the question and answer session. Our tech team will display the slide of questions now. Thank you, sir. So over to you, sir. The questions are being displayed on the screen. You could, read them one after the other. As you're reading them, the tech team will be yanking them off the Slido as we go forward. I think your mic is muted.
So can you hear me now, please?
Yes, we can.
Okay, yeah. Well, the first question here is saying, when entering a new state or federal market, what signals tell you that the timing is right for government technology, GovTech expansion? Quite loads of them, actually we have quite a lot of signals that are like inefficiency of the processes, and also the expectations, in respect of the services of government, where they've been requiring maybe opening up more outlets for maybe collections to meet obligations, and at the same time ensuring that there's inefficiency, to avoid the escapism of governance. These are things that you can see. What will reduce the human interface to service delivery? So those are the key things that are really good signs. And at the same time, government policies as well, they aid. Then the operating environment has to also be enabling. These are key signals that tell you that, that the timing may be right for GovTech expansion. So for companies new to government procurement, like what's the biggest mistake private technology companies make when approaching government as a customer? The most important thing here is what are the biggest mistakes private technology companies make? Hello, can you hear me here? Hello?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Your mic is muted now, sir.
Okay. Hello?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, yes. So like I was saying, that it's very key that we have registers of Nigerian companies. Usually, you have these competitive bids on portals that government's websites are available for people to click on. The mean government is ready. And you also must understand government procurement processes as well. And I'll also learn about tendering processes, that bidding requirements, and also evaluating the criteria. So these are actually supporting lines on how you can be ready for government, for either you are ready, that government is expecting you to participate in their space. Then how do you balance speed with the slower pace of public sector decision making? There are lots of things that we do with the public sector, with the government in Nigeria and within Africa. The most important thing is you have to let them own the system. You also have to let them own the process. You also have to let them understand the benefits of the system, also to their own career path and growth, and also to national development, and how that system will also be aiding critical decision making that will be impacting on their jobs positively while impacting on the people generally. But for companies new to government procurement, what are the first three practical steps to position themselves competitively? The most important thing is you should be able to have your licensing documentations very well, and all the required criteria, for also bidding for positions, and also supporting them with the critical enablement that has to do with security, that has to do with the process flow, and also pricing is also very key. But legacy systems management is key, but another major one is regulatory compliance. So these are also very, very key. So how should a startup position themselves to build partnerships with organizations across border when accessing new markets? Should a startup position themselves to build partnership with organizations across border when accessing new markets? Collaboration, partnership is very, very key. The most important things there are more like the policy signals. You must have the policy, you must have newness, they must have digital transformation agendas, and also have allocations towards utilizing these infrastructures as well. So a very important one is also the institutional signals, where you'll be requiring partnerships with the bigger fintechs on how this also can work. So these are all the critical things that I think that we can address in ensuring that we are able to scale within the continent. So the final question is strategies to help maintain continuity when there's a change in administration or policy direction. Relationship, and also kind of the terms of also the engagements will also have to be documented. Contracts are also very key. So these are things that are supporting, more like layers that can support partnerships with governments. I think these are the things I can see on my screen here, and this is what I've been able to respond to.
Thank you very much. Excellent questions. There's something unique about the questions. Do you notice that many of them are connected to execution discipline? With that in mind, I will say thank you very much, Mr. Abubakar, for taking us through your session. Very insightful, extremely practical. Now we are moving on to the next speaker. Thank you very much for making our time for us. Now, expansion is not only about companies, it's also about systems. To give us the policy and ecosystem lens, we'll be joined by Dr. Salisu Kaka, who is the director at the National Information Technology Development Agency. NITDA plays a central role in shaping Nigerian digital economic framework, from standards to innovation. Today, we'll hear how governments think about cross-border digital growth and how companies can align with national digital priorities when expanding. Dr. Kaka, welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Oluseyi, and a very good morning to all the participants here. I don't know, I'm trying to on my camera. And so see, this is the way I was making that complaint yesterday. Am I visible?
Not yet, sir.
So I went to the camera drop down, I click the standard blow. So what next to do? Not coming off.
You can go to the camera drop down. You go to more videos and effects settings. Then you upload your background and apply it live, and the camera will come on.
And again, why is the background setting? Apology, I couldn't, I will have tried this thing yesterday. I've opened the drop down, I'm trying to add my background, but I can't pick it. What was it sent to? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Please spare us a minute for the technical team to support you.
I click add now background, but I'm not, I don't know where to pick the background setting so that I can project.
So, Dr. Kaka, you can go back to the mail sent to you. You download the background picture, then you'll be able to pick it from your system. On that download.
You know, there are so many emails. I'm on my email now. So which of the emails?
But I thought before we start the session, you have everything set up then, because I saw your picture, I mean your video the other time before you went out.
I connected to this mail through the link sent to my email, and I can't see the background logo that I would project.
Can I suggest you continue while the technical team walk around support?
Okay, fine. So is my slide being projected by anyone? How am I to do that?
It will be projected in a bit.
Okay. Okay. Apology for the hitch up, but I asked these things yesterday so that at least I will have a taste of it so that Are we still waiting for, or should I continue?
Yes, please continue while you're speaking it to be projected. Thank you.
Oh, okay. So thank you very much, my participants, and I welcomed everyone to this very interesting webinar. I have listened attentively to Dr. Abubakar, and he excellently explains the context in good perspective, and I believe we will leave this platform, this webinar, more informed about the opportunities in Africa Free Continental Trade Area as regards to what private sector and even government should be able to leverage. So I will just build on that, and my sessions will be on practical understanding of GovTech regulation, data exchange, and interoperability. Three key words are highlighted there: GovTech, data exchange, and interoperability. I think we're going to understand them as we go through the slides a bit. And the whole idea is, how do we optimize the opportunities in the Africa Continental Trade Area, particularly aspect of the digital trade, which has protocols that has almost 4 out of the 8 elements that are related to technology, and how will private sector design their solutions with scale. We are in a situation where disruptions is pushing pressure on the appetite for infrastructure, appetite for solutions, and appetite for services. So to play safe, you just have to design your solutions with some key elements in mind. One of it is, of course, the scalability. How will you scale your solutions as the market expand, as the technology change, as environment or the space get disrupted? So those are the few things that we are going to understand in this, and I believe what I'm going to tell you will be a refresher to most of us here, and for those that it will be coming as a new knowledge, so at least it will just lay the foundation for further readings and understanding. I will start with the introduction of Africa, of the situation in Africa, not only Africa, but at least the whole global space. Because of the technology disruptions, the major conversation now is around digital public infrastructure. How do we design our technology infrastructure or any other infrastructure with the public in mind, so that that aspect of scalability, that aspect of interoperability, that aspect of integration of systems, platforms, and services will be achieved seamlessly with ease. And of course, things under Africa Free Continental Trade Area agreement, there's an opportunity to trade beyond borders, beyond geopolitical borders, beyond geographical borders. So there is going to be cross-border digital trades coming off and expanding at speeds faster or as fast as the innovation can provide. Then, of course, from the government's concern is, how do we ensure that an effective governance is provided for transformation of this? Because, of course, no doubt, both the public and the private sector and the society at large need to transform from the conventional way of doing things to a digital transformed environment where, as a provider and as a consumer, you should need to know the do's and don'ts are provided by that. Then, of course, the public financial digitalizations, the system need to go digital, so that at least that inclusions, that scalability, that integration that we have been talking about will be achieved. Lastly, digital identity and payment ecosystems. These are critical, because as we go digital, as we go online, people need to be verified. People need to be authenticated. Transactions need to be done real time, so that at least businesses can effectively provide the services, and consumer can get value for their own money, for their own spending, and even the private sector value for their own investment. So, coming down home, the Nigerian technology regulatory ecosystems. This is just, I'm sure you are aware of this. So the few organizations I listed here are those that have direct regulatory responsibility over the technology space, starting with NITDA as the IT regulator of the sector. Our core mandate and responsibility is to provide effective regulatory provisions and oversight that can spur development and push for collaboration between the public and the private sector, so that we have an enabled environment that is business friendly, and of course at the same time regulatory compliance, so that both sides will feel safe to trade. Government will feel safe to push people to the space, so that because they know they have enabled sufficient protection that need to guarantee safety for their own investment, safety for their own personal information, safety for even themselves there. So we have those 4 organizations listed here: NITDA, the NDPC, Nigerian Data Protection Commissions. I'm sure you know what they're doing there is all about protecting the personally identified information of individuals who trade online, who appear online, so that at least we have a healthy living online. Then we have the Nigerian Communication Commission that deals with the connectivity, because the bottom line behind all this innovation, behind all this technology, behind all these transactions or automations, the connectivity is the key. That is the road, the rail that provide foundation for inclusion for every persons to get access to digital services. Then we have the Bureau of Public Procurement. That has to do with the procurement of services and provision of services to the public. So the other section is just the key regulatory authority or regulatory instrument issued by NITDA. Our part of our responsibility is to set national IT standard and issue guidelines where necessary for digital platforms digitization process. And we issue regulatory government's IT projects. We regulate IT project procurement in the public sector to ensure that at least there is value for money and there is compliance to all the regulatory instruments, those that are direct, as mentioned by these 4 entities, and those that are indirect regulations as an oversight. Then, of course, we are promoting interoperability framework for integration of systems, integration of technologies, and interoperability of systems and services. And we are promoting developments of digital public goods. So what is GovTech regulations? We need to understand that. And why do we even need to regulate the technology and give it the name GovTech regulation? So simply, GovTech regulations is just a mechanism that helps to oversee oversee the digital activities within the digital space through development of an essential frameworks like government digital platforms, identity management, data protections, so that we can guarantee and ensure legitimacy of service provisions, legitimacy of service consumption, and we ensure that there is security. The first speaker mentioned something very critical: trust. If trust get eroded, then virtually everything collapses. So you have to earn that trust, and to earn that trust, it requires some efforts, and those are the efforts to ensure that this trust is earned through these necessary frameworks in terms of guidelines, in terms of standards, in terms of regulations, so that at least compliance can be easily enforced, and we promote and push for that integration, that interoperability, so that at the end of the day, everyone, both the consumer and the service provider, the public and the private sector, everyone will be accountable for his action and inactions, and there will be a mechanisms where enforcements needs to be mainstreamed. And so this briefly about the GovTech. So GovTech, in general terms, they are being developed around some key pillars. Next slide, please. Some key pillars, and the pillars I mentioned there are not exhausted, but those are the key ones within our own local space here. So the number can be more than that, or it can be so many other climes. First is the legal legitimacy to ensure that systems operate within the law and framework. So this is at the center of responsibility of NITDA. Within for our mandate, we have that legal responsibility to guarantee that systems designs to operate within guided laws and framework of the country. Then we have the data protections compliance requirement. That's why we have the Nigerian Data Protection Commission to ensure that personally identified information of individuals who are living online, both students and non-students, are being protected. So NDPC is established there to ensure that at least user information are protected against breach, protected against misuse, so that misinformation, disinformation, and any other vices that takes place within the virtual space is checkmate, and ensure that at least there is seamless and healthy engagement within the digital space. Then cybersecurity standard, the security of these informations or the information systems, both the data, both the services, the application that are used to provide these services, and the hard infrastructure that these services run through, including down to connectivity and other non-technical provisions. Ensure that is provided. Government has put in place Nigerian cybersecurity policy and act in which has been revised, I think, in 2023, and the detail is provisioned there as regarding cybersecurity provisions and the technical standards which need co-created with the ecosystems and put into that document and is being implemented. Then we have an interoperability framework within the eGovernment master plan we are implementing. Currently, we are about to learn the second page. There is an interoperability framework. As we said, without integration of these systems, so we'll end up going to be having services or providing services in silos. And this has so many ripple effects in both public and the private sector. To the investors, there will be enough of a high cost of investment because everyone is living on his own, everyone is leveraging or using his own infrastructure, where there will be an opportunity for shared services, for shared infrastructure, which can drastically bring down costs. And also it will ease compliance to regulatory provisions, and it will also make governments easy to enforce what is enforceable and to provide the enabling environment for proper coordination. So that interoperability framework is there to ensure that this exchange or integration of systems, platforms, services are done within that framework. Then as we enable the space, as we regulate, it's the responsibility of government to ensure that consumers they don't find themselves in a vendor locking circumstances. So we ensure that at least whoever is providing technology services or application development, be it software or hardware, there is this vendor neutrality in mind, so that at least within the SLA agreement you sign with the consumer, you design your systems and they use these systems with that flexibility, with that freedom for them to interact with other systems different from your own. So that vendor neutrality is very key in ensuring that interoperability and integration is provided. Then open standards. We promote open standards because we need to own this technology we're using. We don't need to continue believing as consumer of this technology. We need to own the technology we're using by ourselves at the same time, so that at least through open standard, we are promoting leveraging open source application that can allow you to tweak and flex the source code of an open source environment and develop your solution. So by the time you develop the solution by yourself, you have more control than leverage or using technology that are proprietary, that are pouring, whereby you may end up being locked in some certain business bundles that you may end up paying for service that you are not even utilizing or you're not even in need. But when you have that control of this technology, you use what you want and you pay for what you utilize. So this open standard, using open source, so that at least that ownership can be earned. That's what the open standard is trying to promote. Then public accountability. Yes, as we do all these things, we have to be open so that we be seen to be transparent, we be seen to be auditable by the public, and we will be held responsible for any wrongdoings by whatever we have certified and accredited as a certified service provider or certified service consumer. And with this, we are making the engagements very important. Now, regulations. a question asked during the sessions which really connects to this regulatory sandbox. I think the question asked was someone asked it, signal and timing, if I can remember, between signal and time for GovTech to expand, stuff like that. You see, the digital space is being disrupted day in, day out. And as it gets disrupted, it created a gap. And one of the critical gaps that this disruption creates is the gap in regulation, the gap in standardization, and the gap in enforcing for compliance. And again, private sector has to innovate for it to come and provide solution with that speed to meet the demands of the society. So do we stifle innovations through hard regulations so that at least we don't end up being compromised in terms of our own responsibility? Or do we allow innovations to go unchecked until we hit a rock where government need to come in and provide protection and provide safety for the consumers? So that would be, there must be a check and balance and a trade-off between to what extent can government regulate and to what extent can the private sector disrupt the systems and come up with innovation. So this concept of sandbox regulatory prohibitions, I think, is one of the best approaches that can guarantee that the regulatory approach by governments take the tune of developmental nature, meaning it's allow innovations to thrive and provide a minimum viable product tested within that provided provisions in terms of standard controlled environments. And when government gets satisfied that, yes, this innovation has made the minimum regulatory provision in terms of compliance to technical standards, in terms of compliance to rules and regulations, and then government can come up with a simple guideline. They say, okay, yes, for you to innovate this route, come through this regulatory sandbox. It's a test environment. And once you come out of that regulatory sandbox, it's as good that your product is good to go. So government won't be concerned about bringing in regulations at the same speed with the innovation is coming in. Most important, it has an environment, a controlled environment sort of that can allow these innovations to proliferate and to come up with the solutions before it comes to the public. So solutions, products, of innovation can go to the public without necessarily having a complete regulation per se, because truth of the matter, governments it has to continue to be playing this catch-up game in terms of the innovation speed because of the expansion and the increase in demands and other. So these are the few things I think that the regulatory or GovTech regulations is coming forward to provide, so that at least the regulatory sandbox can be used to facilitate control innovations and allow risk-based supervisions by the government, so that we ensure that what needs to be complied is complied, and those solutions are designed with that compliance mindset in mind. So that's simply what we call about GovTech regulations. And as we are doing that, as I said, the whole essence is to push for interoperability, to push for effective data governance, to ensure that the digital public infrastructure that are needed to guarantee or enable the private sector to come up with the digital public goods for public demand and scalability are there. So in NITDA here, we are operationalizing these RegTech through sandboxes, which indirectly is being called the GovTech solutions in other climes. And key things that we consider is we promote national interoperability framework. We have the data governance rule. We are working with the federal ministry and the other relevant agencies on the digital public infrastructure. So next slide, please. So the Nigerian digital public infrastructure, I think this is straightforward, and I will not waste much time here. The three fundamental rails globally being implemented for digital public infrastructure are the digital identity, the payments platforms, and the national data exchange. In our situation, Nigeria, locally to us, we have the NIN, which is serving as the national identity number. And they've done so much in terms of digitalization, in terms of automation of these NIN. We're all Nigerians, and I believe we know how NIN is leveraged as foundational identity to get services that are digitally delivered. from financial sector to the education sector to agricultural sector. NIN-ID is leveraged as foundational elements, and other identities like like road safety, driving license, like international passport. Those leverage digital identity, NIN number as foundational element to provide service identities. And on the payment platforms, we have Nigerian interbank settlement systems. The first speaker mentioned about the need to have real-time business transaction, and eTranzact is a living witness to leveraging this type of platform, and is a rich platform, NIBSS, that is globally recognized in terms of security, in terms of standard, in terms of swift conversions of transactions in real time. And I think because of that, that would even enable the financial sector as a whole to have portfolios of digitally delivered services in terms of financial, to the extent the Fintech were able to provide inclusion into digital services leveraging this type of platform. So the data exchange, it's what Nigeria as a government is largely lacking in terms of having a national data exchange. And that is exactly what the ministry now working on. Hopefully before end of Q1 or mid Q2, we're going to launch the National Data Exchange. And the essence of the National Data Exchange is just to ensure that there is seamless movements of information, data across platforms, across sector, across regions. And this is to complete the remaining, which is the absence of the National Data Exchange is like the missing rail that connects the national digital public infrastructure roadmap. So we're almost 80% complete in terms of connecting the three. And once the exchange is up and running, we'll start onboarding sectors, onboarding organizations, both public and private, for transfer or movement of data, consent-based data approach sharing, and all necessary provision in terms of security, in terms of data protection, in terms of privacy, in terms of standardizations, APIs, interoperability are all carefully put in. I encourage all of us to go online. The two documents are online: National Technical Standard for Data Exchange and DPI Public Infrastructure framework issued by the ministry. The details are there in terms of what is contained there. Next slide, please. So we need to understand, I explained, okay, data exchange in brief, and I think through my conversation also, I also explained what is on interoperability. But why do we need this interoperability? And what types of these interoperabilities that are there in operation? So interoperability helps us to enable systems to securely exchange and understand data as they move from one location to the other, from one platform to the other. And traditionally, if I may use this word, there are three layers of this interoperability: the technical interoperability, the semantic interoperability, and institutional interoperability. The technical, I think, is clear. It's all about what are the technical standards in terms of soft skills and softwares, in terms of hardware, in terms of firmwares that can guarantee these interoperabilities. So that is the interoperability in terms of technical standard. Then in terms of semantics, how do we organize our data? What is the data format? For example, you see data structure is structured in the way that, okay, personal information like biodata, first name, second name, third name. Some will start with surname, first name, third names. For example, when you are reading, putting dates, year, month, date, some will use day, month, year. So there's so many standards. So any organizations, any system is free to decide and agree on which format are you adopting. So if Nigerian government said, okay, any bio information about individual, the first information will be a first name, surname, then other name. So all data needs to be structured to take this form, so that as you export data from one platform to the other, it's easy for the recipient to digest that data and do analytics with ease, so that at least you know that whatever he sees in column 1 corresponds with what he wants to see in column 1 as first name, second name, third name, in that order. Then institutional interoperability is in terms of trying to tame the overlap in terms of regulatory responsibility. Truth of the matter, the digital space is one that always sorry for that mix-up. Institutional interoperability is to ensure that there is no overlaps in terms of regulations. For example, NITDA will decide to issue regulations that is a duplication to what Nigerian data protection will issue when it comes to aspect of personally identified information, or the information infrastructure that is used to house this information, or the channels where this information are going to be, or this data is going to be transmitted. So that institutional interoperability need to be streamlined to ensure that at least it's seamless, there's no conflicts, and every responsible or every entity with that responsibility in terms of standards for compliance is being accommodated, so that if it warrant regulation to be issued, we issue it as a combat regulation. I can give you one classical example of this combat regulations when the Central Bank, Security Exchange Commission, and NITDA comes together to address the aspect of virtual asset service providers under the concept of the blockchain provision through as a result of the issue of the national blockchain policy issued by the Ministry of Communication, Innovation and Digital Economy. So we agree that, okay, SEC will regulate the digital assets because the product is more to them than it is to NITDA and to CBN. So the regulation issued by SEC is a converged regulation with input from NITDA in terms of technical standard, with input from Central Bank of Nigeria in terms of financial requirement. So SEC issued that regulatory provision for virtual asset service providers, and is with that regulation they were able to accredit and license digital exchanges which recognize digital asset service provisions, and that people can trade their own digital goods and earn value for themselves, and they use that proceed or that outcome to do fiat transactions over the counter, because CBN issue also a guidelines to augment the provisions issued by SEC. So this is one of it. So at least we make compliance easy for the private sector. Next slide, please. I think I explained why we need this interoperability, so I can easily skip these things. The whole idea is to ensure that we collect the silos, students can submit the same data repeatedly. Yeah, then frauds, taking risks of frauds, easy for data analytics, because we have one central point where we can pick information, and this information are reliable because they are shared with consent of the owner, and they comply with all the technical standard. And of course, we can design this thing with scalability in mind, so that at least when you are designing a system with that interoperability in mind, then it means you allow scalability to. This scalability can be done by either yourself as the owner or by somebody who's representing your own technology to provide another layer of services. And of course, the end result is there will be reduced cost, because where you can port technology easily from one platform to the other, where you can easily replicate or reuse systems from one service to the other, where you can share infrastructure. All these are measures that can help in the reducing cost and improve transparency of service, and also transparency in terms of consumer protections, in terms of compliance to technical standard. Next slide, please. So I explained national data exchange platforms. I think all these things I explained earlier when I'm talking about the semantics in terms of data format standard. So these are some of the information that are included in the technical standard which we issued out in the public when we are working on the Nigerian digital and that national digital public infrastructure programs. We have this technology, the JSONs, the XML, HTMLs, in terms of defining how you can structure the data, and the transmission protocols. It has to be APIs. There's going to be generic APIs that will allow others to come up with their systems to connect through this API, which is tied to the National Data Exchange. We have all those message and protocol, the race SOPs, and the rest like that. Next slide, please. Then, of course, the interoperability framework is already out under the eGovernment Master Plan 2.0, and we ensure that at least the enterprise architecture we are designing, it mainstream this interoperability in mind, so that as we onboard MDAs into this enterprise architecture, it gives us a 360 view of what technology is being used in what area and what services is needed in what area. So it can easily give governments easy view of what is needed, easy view of where there are gaps in terms of standard, in terms of reach, in terms of even access. Then, of course, security control are there. We ensure that there must be encryptions, authentication has to be done. That's why we have the national identity number as a foundational element, operational ID. Then, of course, there should be authorization, because I said earlier, this sharing of information through the national data is going to be consent-based data sharing. Nobody is going to get access to your data without you issue or giving it out consently. And you have to know why this information is being collected. That's why we also have the NDPC there to ensure that data collected is used for why it has been issued for. So there's going to be audit logs to ensure that no breach, and any instances where breach is there, the standard or the compliance instrument is there to ensure that the regulation is followed through the GovTech provision. Then the governance and compliance rules are there to define who get access to what data and under what condition this information can be used and for what purposes. All those things are details in those instruments issued by the various regulatory agencies. Next slide, please. I think we're almost there. Why data exchange matters in GovTech. These are some of the key reasons. It prevents siloed database. It reduces duplication of data collections, because key information need to be collected once, so that you don't need to go back to user always give me your biodata, give me your home address, for example, if you want to open an account, that's why we have link with name and account number. So for your account to be opened, first famous, it requires you to provide your name. Your name carries all your biodata, your first name, your second name, your address, your gender, everything about you. So banks to create an account for you doesn't need to collect this information again from you, because it's already collected by NIMC. So they will just hit NIMC database, because NIMC has a general API that issued to all who will connect, enter there, patch your information, then they put on top of those profile the financial information, meaning create your account number, give you a BBN number, and the same BBN number you take when you want to open another account in another bank. So when you go there, the second bank will just ask you about your BBN number, so that at least they know for you to have BBN number, your name has been accommodated in the first bank that gave you that account. So it will just also leverage that and also create another account number for you. So you can see that interoperability of or leveraging the shared services. This is one of the benefits. Then improve service delivery efficiency. Of course, with this, it will require it will come with efficiency, and it enables evidence-based policy making, because the data that we have 360 view of the data that is available in any entity, and at least that data can be harvested to make an informed decision in terms of policy provisions for further deployments and integration. Then threatens fraud detections. Yes, we can identify, because that's collaboration, that integration of systems. So at least the security is tightened, because there's dependency. You know that you're connecting with other person's device. So for you to do that, you have to ensure that you comply with the minimum technical standard in terms of security, so that at least you don't end up becoming the weakest link into that the network you are going into. Then it supports the digital public infrastructure provision in the context of provision of digital public goods. Digital public goods are goods that are designed with scalability in mind, with interoperability in mind, with people-centric or user-centric, and It allows portability, means you can design a systems to provide a particular services in the education sector because you leverage open source, because you use open APIs, open technical standard. The same solution can be ported and applied into education sector with a little tweaking to domesticate that solution, because the core foundational provision is open source. So you can easily tweak that and just make it to align with your own requirement. So without that structured data exchange, the digital systems remain isolated, and of course, the end result will be inefficiency. Next slide, please. Design for trust in GovTech, meaning that whether you are designing, put at your back of your mind that you want to earn the trust of your user. And you can only earn this trust of the user or the customer or the public by you complying with the regulations provided in the GovTech environment. So building trust with GovTech systems, it requires a multifaceted approach, means you need to look at all the available necessary regulations that are there in space. You need to comply with NITDA technical standards in terms of security, for example, in terms of network design, for example, in terms of website provision, for example, for portals that are running business. You need to comply with NDPC data protection provisions. You need to comply with, for example, these consumer protections in ICPC in terms of consumer protection. So that's why I say it's multifaceted, but it's not complex. It's simple as long as you invest in reading and identifying what is needed for you to domesticate this regulation into your own systems. So once you get that set, I guarantee you are going to have a solution that will meet all these requirements. And of course, the trust will naturally come because there's not going to be hitch, there's not going to be fraud, and users are not going to be victim of simply transacting with your own, using your own platform or using your own solutions. Next slide, please. Design for cross-border scalability. Again, as you are designing things where within the Africa Free Continental Trade Area space, where is an effort to ensure that the access to the African market at least is being expanded. You can be here in Nigeria, you can be here in Abuja, and you can access market in Cote d'Ivoire, you can access market in South Africa, you can access market in Ghana, and so there's cross-border requirements that need to be provided. I can remember the digital trade protocols. It has 4 thematic areas, 8 thematic areas, and 4 out of that 8 is all around the technology. There's aspect of digital identity. There's an effort to harmonize the identities, because as it is now, every member nation within Africa, they have their own format in terms of the digital identity. So there's an effort to harmonize that so that we have an overarching framework that recognize identities of member states regardless of the differences that are being used to design them. Then there is aspect of cross-border payments. You do a transaction here and your payment may likely come off through a bank in another country. So how do we ensure that we have that payments platforms cross-border recognized? So they added aspect of digital technologies or payments technologies for payments platform. So also trying to harmonize these payment platforms. I think the first speaker made mention of PAPs and other effort, I think, to come up with another more integrated payment platforms that is almost near uniform with equal recognition in terms of financial regulations and compliance requirement, so that this payments is done seamless, so that this transaction is done seamless across borders, across jurisdictions. Then, of course, there is an aspect of the data, because data needs to flow again cross-border between one platform to another platform, between from one jurisdiction to another jurisdiction. So that digital trade protocol also has provisions, all those details on how this can be streamlined and so that we have that common approach in terms of digitally delivered service across boundaries. So you design your product, your services, your solution with that cross-border scalability in mind, so that at least you don't only restrict your solution to operate within your own jurisdiction or within your own geopolitical space, you are targeting other space. So you need to also read wide and what are those requirements. Thank God the AfCFTA, they have done extensive work in terms of making it easy for private sectors, for innovators, for entrepreneurs to explore and provide a service and take opportunity in the African market expansion. Then common scalability mistake. These are just an effort to bring out some of the basic things that you need to keep watch, so that at least if you be careful to abide by these things, your transit or your journey to scalable and GovTech scalable access to market and compliance to RegTech will be much easy, and you avoid undergoing or passing through some pitfalls in government systems, so that like for example, the priority systems, the poor data plannings, all these things are essentials to ensure that at least you have this as checklist. So these are the 7 elements I just highlighted there. Number 1 is map regulatory authorities for better alignment, conduct data protection assessment for all systems, align frameworks to ensure the seamless interoperability, implement documentation standard for all your APIs, build audit architecture for compliance, validations, and I'll go review a regulation sandbox for testings and prepare scalability planning for cross-border. So that's why I mentioned earlier, I said the best approach is for both the public and the private sector to come together through collaboration and work with this sandbox approach to ensure that at least those checklists are being tested within this sandbox environment, and any aberration, any derailment to that is being patched, so that at least the solutions come out seamlessly as MVP, and just to improve on it after government standardize the process and issue a standard regulation to enable that. So enabling innovation while regulating is to ensure that there's effective regulation must be proportionate, risk-based, innovation-friendly, standard-driven, transparent. And I think at NITDA, we pride ourselves in doing this. We have the intelligence regulatory framework that we are implementing. And through this intelligent regulatory framework, we ensure that there's co-creation approach in any regulation that we do. For those following our activity, they will be a witness that we always engage in stakeholder engagement, going with a zero draft with what we intend to do. Then we get the buy-in or get the feedback from the public sector, from the stakeholder or the ecosystem entirely. And we reiterate this thing until we feel we get saturated before we issue this regulation. So this approach of co-creations, it's helped us in easy getting the buy-in of the stakeholders, because they are part and parcel, or they contribute to the development of the regulation, so that it's we are not issuing out just an armchair theory regulation. We sit within our confine zone and issue regulation. We don't do that any longer. Yes, we did that in the past, but we don't do that any longer. We always go through the public to co-create this thing. That's why we come up with that intelligent regulatory framework, so that by the time we go 1, 2, 3 rounds in terms of stakeholder engagement, and we reiterate, we filter, and we get saturated, then we come with the regulation issued out. And we don't even stop at that. We do sort of M&E, because as the regulatory instrument put into use, gaps will be identified. As I said earlier, disruption always creates gaps. These gaps, not only in terms of infrastructure, but in terms of regulation as well. So we get a feedback. Is another means of feedback mechanism that we come back and feel that we need to tighten the knots and ensure that we patch off where need to be patched, or remove entirely what need to be removed, because the development has taken over the requirement. So these are some strategic recommendations for compliance, both by public and government. From the government side, adopt interoperability framework. This document is already available, and through the eGovernment master plan is being updated. Then mandate open API standard. I mentioned that we are pushing for API standards through the data exchange we are issuing out. Establish a regulatory sandbox. This we have started piloting this sandbox, and of recent, very soon we are going to work with the Ministry of Health and their regulatory agency to pilot a sandbox regulatory approach to implement 32 technical standards adopted by the Ministry of Health. And this standard were adopted almost 10 years ago. And so because of the disruption and because of a lack of a harmonized framework, the Ministry of Health couldn't leverage or explore these standards even though it has been subscribed, paid, and adopted. They are global standards within the health sector. So we want to pilot this thing, and this is part of the RegTech effort we are pushing. Then promote digital public goods. As I said earlier, always try to ensure that we push the private sector to develop solutions with scalability in mind, interoperability in mind, and people-centric or user-centric, and with security in mind, right from the design. Then we are trying to ensure that the private sector aligned with the AfCFTA digital trade agenda, so that at least we optimize the opportunity that there are. Nigeria is the biggest market in the entire AfCFTA environment. So we are at liberty to influence and dictate or even take over that Africa content market. But we can only do that when we have an effective regulation that are compliant, that are standard. And from the private sector or the private sector, particularly startup and developers who develop the solution that the private sector used to leverage and provide the services, you need to design compliance-first architecture. Whatever you are designing, put compliance at the back of your mind, so that at least before you start even dropping the first code, you know all the requirements that are needed in terms of compliance to technical standard, in terms of compliance to regulations, in terms of compliance to some guidelines that are enforceable. Then engage the regulators early, so that at least you know that if there are new things coming forward before it becomes public entirely, at least the interaction will help you to know what are the next steps, what are the trends, what are the likelihood of new things to come out, so that you end up bringing your solutions today and tomorrow another regulation comes in. So that engagement will help you to be at sync, will help you to be at the same page with the trends, as government is thinking, private sector also is thinking. So we'll be thinking together, so that at least when you come to the co-creation table, you'll be talking the same thing, you'll be talking the same language, because you have been corresponding, we have been collaborating, you have been talking to each other, rather than just staying at your corner, government stay its own corner until when the need arises to come together. So it will take longer than necessary for us to know that, okay, this has done so far, I'm not aware from the government side, this has done so far, I'm not aware from the private sector. So that continuous discussion will have to ease the deployment of the technical standard and ease compliance, so that you come from the word go, your solutions are out to comply with the regulatory standard. Then, of course, prioritize trust and security. This is for everybody's goods. This is for everybody who's particularly the developers. You need to come up with a solution that is tested and trusted, as the political statement. So the more you earn this, I think the far you can go in terms of your investment. Then final thought, GovTech in governance architecture is not just a software. It defines how institutions design, deliver, and sustain public value. Interoperability is the foundation of scalability. You have to interoperate, you have to integrate before you can scale. Trust is a regulatory outcome. And this is clear. Trust is earned, and you can only earn when that compliance to regulation is abided by, so that people feel safe, feel secured, and have confidence in the service. Then after transformations is there, in Nigeria, NITDA is essential to digital coherence and regulatory integrity, effective oversight, ensure alignment, security, and sustainable innovation. My last slide, sorry for taking you too much long. Closing statement. Africa digital future depends not only on innovation, but on responsible, interoperable, and scalable systems design. When regulation is clear, interoperability is enforced. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kaka. This is super packed, very, very important, and thank you for the clarifications. I think now we'll move on to the question and answer, because I know there's a lot of questions. When it comes to regulations, there's always questions. Please, our tech team can put up the questions, so Dr. Kaka can just deal with it. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Kaka.
Okay. The first question, for startup building GovTech or data-driven platforms, what are the most critical NITDA regulation they must align with from day one? So I think it depends on the solutions you are developing, because there are general requirements and there are some specific requirements that ensure that this GovTech compliance is mainstream. So since I don't know what exactly you are into, so let me talk about the general one. The first and foremost, in terms of information security, I'm starting with the information security because it's the one that like cover or enveloped all other standards. It's just like consider like a roof of a building. If you have a good walls, good furniture inside, everything done without good roofings, you are exposing all this things that inside are danger. So it's like the roofing security or cyber security, to be more specific, is that the roofing that provide protection to everything that inside the house. So knows everything about cyber security, about information security that needs to be complied. The Nigerian Cyber Security Act, Provision Act, and Nigerian Cyber Security Strategy are there and are being implemented. And the NITDA was the technical lead in developing all those requirements, even though it's being implemented now and driven by Office of the National Security Advisor. So everything that is there, I think you need to know that. The second one is the infrastructure you are to design with. There are minimum technology standards it defines when you want to design your systems in form of hardware infrastructure. So that's why we have original equipment manufacturer, which we license and we accredit for them to develop and issue this product to the public. So there's minimal technical standards that are also defined there, so that at least you also need to be abreast with those provisions and get clarity on what to do. For example, if you are into hardware, similarly also you are into software, we have those standards also defined. The other one I think I will bring is in terms of compliance to provisions that are under the regulations. What I mean by under the regulations, there are some regulation. That's a regulation that bring in all those technical standards into enforcement. So also this one needs to be so that at least you know that when you did not comply with this technical standard, there is an enforcement mechanism that will be applied there. I hope this provide a bit of clarity into the question. So the second question, how can founders proactively engage regulators without slowing down product development? I mentioned the sandbox regulatory approach we are adopting. So the easiest way in order not to stop the speed of innovations, come through this regulatory sandbox. You are developing your solutions, you are being guided with what is needed to be complied with, so that but you are only to ensure that you comply with the basic requirements, so that at the end, when your MVP is out, it has substantially complied with all the regulation that it will come to be out, so that at least once a product, then it's good to go to the public, it's good for commercialization. Then the other requirements will come off later after usage. Over time, when the solution are put into use and there is feedback on the gaps in terms of technology or the terms of regulation, then strategically the government will come up with that regulation. So the sandbox approach is one of the simplest way where government and private sector can work together, so that at least we don't stifle that speed of innovation from the private sector. What is NITDA long-term vision for national data exchange and interoperability across ministry and NDS? Thank you. Very good question. Our long-term vision is to have an overarching national data exchange that integrates all the public and private sector, so that at least there is seamless access to information that are shared within consent-based approach, and With that, we are achieving an integrated or whole of government approach. At any given point of time, government will know the status of its investments, both by the public and by the private sector into IT. It knows the status of the services being delivered. It knows the status of what are the services in demand in one locality, what are the services in absence in another locality. So a good picture where government can intelligently and scientifically come up with a policy that are used So the long term is to ensure that every sector, both public and private, are integrated into the nation data because he can get access to service regardless of his location, regardless of his. So what common compliance gaps do you see in companies seeking to integrate with government systems?
Hello, doctor. We can't hear you. I think Dr. Kaka has some network issues. It's been a very engaging session. I would say very important clarification he has done. A very elaborative session. Now, to close the playbook conversation, we move into HealthTech, where expansion isn't just commercial; it's life impacting. We'll be joined by Temie Giwa-Tunbosun, founder and CEO of LifeBank. LifeBank has scaled health, logistics, and technology solutions across the African market. They've navigated infrastructure gaps, regulatory environment.
My apology. My system's power went off. Unfortunately, I didn't notice that I have full power, so I have to switch quickly to another system. My sincere apology for that, please.
Thank you very much,
I'm
Doctor.
back.
We
I'm
appreciate
back.
that.
Sorry.
We have moved on to another speaker. While we would make sure that questions asked by attendees are channeled through the WhatsApp group for you to follow up with them. Thank you very much for your time, Doctor. Now,
Thank you.
LifeBank has scaled health logistics and technology solutions across markets. They've navigated infrastructure gaps, regulatory environment, and mission critical execution. Temie will share what it really takes to scale responsibly in a sensitive sector like healthcare. It's a honor to have you here, the CEO of LifeBank. Over to you, Temie.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Can everybody hear me well?
Yes, we can.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Apologies for that minor technical issue. I'm so honored to be here today. Thank you so much for the opportunity to hear me speak about what it takes to build a Pan-African company, like we like to call it, to be in every place, delivering really critical supplies and critical consumables for hospitals. I mean, it was so brilliant to get to listen to Dr. Kaka at, you know, and it was just brilliant to hear his thoughts about how government is so critical to the work that we do as innovators. And I couldn't agree more with him. And what a powerful speech and what a powerful lesson and lecture that we received. My conversation today will be a little bit more, this is what's happening in the field, and this is what you need to think about as you consider the work that you're doing. So I will just start here by sharing my screen and to just start the conversation from where it started. I'll just brief you briefly about what LifeBank is. LifeBank is a medical distribution company. We build technology to ensure that supplies reach the right place at the right time, always, right? That is our big reason for existing. You know, for us today, my job today is to share our experience scaling a health tech company across Africa, across African countries, not just from theory, but from like the reality of operating in this continent. Over the last several years, LifeBank has built, we have managed to build what we call the healthcare infrastructure across multiple countries. And you know what we have learned so far is that expanding within Africa is not just we can't copy the workflow of American companies or European companies expanding within their own market. We have to sort of like create our own way of expansion. And why should you expand, and what are the benefits of expanding? So that's my goal today, to just share our own lessons on what it takes to expand within the continent. All right. So why expand, right? What actually is the reason to expand, right? We often hear about African startups really wanting to scale across Africa. When you're talking to investors, when you're talking to, even, your partners and your friend, it sounds really cool to be operational across multiple markets. It's logical. The continents have shared problems. There is a problem in Nigeria, most likely it's going to be the same problem would exist in Kenya and in Ethiopia and in Egypt. So it makes sense for us to see like shared problems across our continent. Africa has a very large market, growing market. And then, of course, this continental trade agreement makes it really exciting to get into that expansion flow. But in practice, very few companies on the continent actually are able to keep that scale and operate successfully across multiple markets. It's not that African companies are not ambitious. They are very, very ambitious. I'm ambitious. I imagine all of you guys on this call are very, very ambitious. And you want to build that classic, iconic company that operates across different markets. So the issue really is not the ambition, it's the friction that actually happens when you try, when you attempt to expand. The moment you decide to cross the border of where you live and where you're a citizen, everything changes. Regulations behave differently, financial systems behave differently, even trust, like, brand trust, the trust in your brand changes, right? If you're well trusted in Nigeria as a Nigerian homegrown company, by the time you enter Kenya, you are now a Nigerian business. And, the trust that you have, the type of sort of like cultural expertise that you have will change. So even if you're solving the same problem, you still end up building different institutions in different countries. So the real question is not, is expansion desirable? I think it is. The real question is, what does expansion feel like? I like to say that, sometimes I wake up in the morning and something has happened in Ethiopia. Now that is my problem for the day. The next day, it is something that happened in Sierra Leone. Now I have to fix that problem. So you essentially, when you expand as the executive or as the founder, you exist in different countries, and different countries' problem become your problem. So it is, you know, what does expansion feel like on a Friday afternoon when something breaks somewhere where you're so far from that place, but it becomes something that you now need to solve. So I will just briefly tell you a little bit about LifeBank. We build digital infrastructure to ensure that hospitals, healthcare providers can access supplies, financing, and operational tools. The problem in the African health systems where we operate, the problem is not always absence of resources, right? That is the thing we tell ourselves. But you know, as someone who's been building in this sector for years, it's not always just the resources are not there. Sometimes it's coordination, right? A hospital may need blood, a supplier has that blood, and funding may even exist. The patient is ready to pay, but the three of them are disconnected at the moment where care must happen. So what we're doing is building that technology that connects all the different actors, from the payer, right, the insurance, to the bank financing, to the healthcare providers themselves, to the patient, essentially building that rail that ensures that care becomes predictable, and is predictable instead of reactive. All right. I hope you can still see me, and I hope you can see my screen, and I hope if you have any questions for me, I'm really eager to take the questions at the end of this conversation. People often think that LifeBank is a logistics company, and that's because you guys see all those bikes and trucks moving supplies from one place to the other. You see that those targets with the cross in between it, and you're like, oh, there goes LifeBank. But LifeBank is not just logistics, even though the logistics side is what is visible to many people. What we've actually built is a system coordination platform. Our platform allows hospitals, labs, blood banks, suppliers, financial institutions, and governments to essentially operate with shared information and aligned processes. When information, financing, and products move together, care becomes essentially reliable. Infrastructure is not movement. Infrastructure is synchronization at scale. So when every single piece of the entire puzzle moves and are synchronized and are speaking to each other in real time, you actually solve the coordination problem. And you have a health system that is agile, that is efficient, that can deal with major issues, and it's just a better way of operating. So that's what we've built. We've built the operating system for healthcare on the continent. All right. So LifeBank currently operates across 4 countries. So proud to be one of those companies that actually has proven that this could work. We operate in Nigeria, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Sierra Leone. Every country that we enter teaches us different lessons and allows us to build the scale to actually become pan-African, to exist in every single African company. What Nigeria taught us, of course, we're Nigerian. I'm proudly Nigerian. We started our business in Lagos. So what Nigeria has taught us is operational discipline, because once you get to scale, it exposes the weaknesses in your structure, in your system. So being able to be disciplined, operating across all of Nigeria, right? Operating in, of course, the huge urban area of Lagos, but also operating in very rural areas in, say, Yobe State, for example, moving commodities from Damaturu to last mile primary health centers. That scale ensures that you have that operational discipline that you require. Kenya, when we entered Kenya, it was a completely different market. So what we ended up learning and absorbing from the Kenyan market is that partnerships and interoperability is very critical. You have to build technology within technology that already exists. You have to build APIs that can speak to technology that hospitals are already using. So that interoperability is very, very critical once you're moving from to Kenya. Ethiopia, right? Ooh, what an amazing market. Ethiopia requires deep regulatory alignment from day one. The Ethiopian government is very involved in the, the reality, the day-to-day reality of the people in Ethiopia. So as a business who operates there, making sure that you're seriously aligned with the government is absolutely essential. What we learned in Sierra Leone is how do you test all of this big structure in a very smaller market in terms of people, in terms of revenue? How do you make sure that you are able to build that impact alignment into your financial market so that you can be adaptable to other smaller countries that are very, they're mostly the majority on the continent in terms of countries. So how do you operate in a small market with a small population? So expansion stopped becoming like, oh, we need to move from one geography to other. It became like, how do we build models of existing in different types of countries, right? Sierra Leone is a model for a specific group of countries on the continent. Nigeria is a model for larger institutions, larger countries in the continent. So what we've been able to do with all the 4 countries we operate in is to figure out our capacity to operate in different structures so that we are prepared to be Pan-African, right? If countries are very highly regulated, if a particular country has a very highly regulatory environment, our experience in Ethiopia allows us to be able to enter those markets and still have the institutional capacity to be disciplined and to operate in those markets. Right, moving on. I cannot stress this enough, right? Expansion is not replication, right? This is where many startups struggle. And of course, when you're talking to your board, when you're talking to your folks, they tell you like, oh, expansion, just, build the tech and then, move it to different markets. It's not, right? It doesn't mean that the model that works in Nigeria is going to work in Kenya. It doesn't mean that the model that works in Kenya will work in Ethiopia. Essentially, you have to have a structure, of course, but then have the flexibility to operate, to update your operating model for every single country in their context. Licensing changes, bank changes, the way a bank works changes. For example, in a country, I won't mention their name, but there's a country where we can't do any digital banking. We have to literally write letters all the time. Procurement behavior changes and trust changes, right? Particularly if you guys are Nigerian companies, when you move outside Nigeria, you carry that Nigeria on your forehead, and people's opinion about this country will affect their opinion and the trust in your brand, right? There's some countries where you enter, they love Nigerians. They think we're like their big brothers and they're excited to sort of like work with us, to learn from us. Those countries are much easier to operate in because trust is already essentially the citizenry of that country already trust the Nigerian brand. But when you move to some countries where maybe the trust is not so much there, you have to now over build on trust. Make sure that you're really committed to increasing that trust in that market, because no matter what you do, your name sounds Nigerian. You started your company in Nigeria. You are tagged with that name, with that brand, and you must be aware of that and engage with it and make sure that you plan for that. Expansion is very expensive, right? I say that. It is incredible. It is amazing. It allows you to build a scaled business, but there are so many costs of expanding within expanding. Expansion costs are always invisible when you are planning. You think, oh, I just need to have an office and I need to have my, my tech, and I need to have if you need distribution, I need to have my distribution. But there are a lot of other costs. Currency volatility can erase your margins in a couple of months. There's problems with repatriating your profit sometimes in some markets, right? It can delay working capital. It can delay the movement of capital from one country to the other, right? Interpreting policy in this market is also can create execution delays. Infrastructure gaps happen, right? There are some places where there are roads, then they're everywhere is starred, everywhere you can get to the last mile very quickly. And on the markets, you really still have to struggle to reach that last mile. So it means that it's very complex, right? And you have to be sure that you are ready. For the next couple of slides, I'm just going to be basically sharing some lessons that I have learned on how to expand. So if expansion is still a focus for you, if you are still really, really, really keen on expanding outside Africa, this is what I want you to remember. The first one is only expand if expansion inherently improves your business model. The business models that are fine without getting to scale, right? There are business models that are, you can build a fantastic business, an iconic business without leaving the one country where you started it. However, when your business model will be excellent at scale, then expansion becomes critical, right? And that was our own lesson, was the first lesson that I learned, that while our business model is excellent, it must get to scale. We must have critical mass of users, critical mass of care centers, right? To make sure that we actually get to that unicorn status, which then means that expansion is absolutely essential for us, right? It is not a growth tactic, it is a business model decision. It is not, oh, I need more customers, let me expand. No, it is, I need this business model that I've selected that is best for the problem I'm solving for. It will get to the best way, it will get to the best place if it has expanded, right? Before entering a new market, you have to ask, does this additional network that I'm going to get improve my operating cost? Does it improve my COGS, right? Is it improving the unit economics of your business, right? Does this presence in a new country allow me to defend my model, right? Does it inherently give me defensibility, or does it actually create more complexity for my business, right? Is it unlocking something major for you, right? If expansion does not make you stronger, don't do it. It is a distraction. It is only when expansion is making you stronger, it is making your business model smarter, it is increasing your unit economics, that it becomes really critical for you to do it. So before you take the step of expansion, make sure that this expansion is really, really inherently improving my unit economics and improving my business. I cannot stress this enough. Compliance is your strategy. A lot of times when we build companies in Nigeria, compliance is great, but it is not the first thing we learn as we build businesses, right? The minute you get outside Nigeria as a company that is not homegrown, the compliance expectation becomes higher, right? Particularly when you're operating in regulated sectors, like, for example, we operate in healthcare. This is probably the most highly regulated sector in the world. So compliance is not just something that you will give your legal team or something that you give your COO. As a CEO of a company, compliance is your responsibility, right? We have had so many, we've had, so many failures I would like to share because, compliance was shifted towards our legal team instead of being owned in my office and being owned as something that I look after on a regular basis. So as you expand, make sure that you have heavily invested in your governance, in your regulatory structure, in the operating efficiency, in the operating structure of your business, and you are documenting every single thing. This is where you build trust. This is when you build that operational speed. And this is when government relations does not slow you down or actually stop you altogether. The more regulators trust you, the more you're going to be able to move within that system faster. So compliance is not, something that you can push aside. It is something that you look after on a regular basis the minute you decide expansion is for you. Technology must reduce your cost. A lot of us just like, oh, I'm a tech company. I'm building a tech company. Oh, tech. Tech is great, but it is not useful if it does not give your business model something significant. The way we think about this is that tech allows us to leapfrog faster. Tech allows us to reduce our operating cost, right? Because, for example, I'll give you a real example. If I know what hospital ABC require in the next couple of 24 hours, right? Then when I am delivering, delivering supplies to those 3 hospitals, I can batch it together, which means that one trip, the cost of one trip is now being added to 3 orders, which reduce the cost of service for the three orders that I just delivered, right? The same thing on an expanded basis. We have something internally at LifeBank that we call shared services, which means that people operations, things like finance function, things like engineering, things like communications, all of those services are shared across the 4 countries where we operate, which actually reduces significantly the cost of operating in each market. Because now HR is looking after 4 countries instead of having HR in all 4 countries, right? And we deploy technology to make sure that we are still able to execute at a very high level by using that technology, right? By building systems so that HR person here in Lagos can look after an employee in Sierra Leone using a tech platform to make sure that they have everything that they need. So for us, technology really should allow you to deliver consistency across all the markets you work, but at the same time allows you to lower your cost. I like to say that the first thing I did as the CEO of LifeBank was bury my ego, right? Completely get rid of it. It's not serving you, right? And that humbleness, that humility to meet people where they are, to, allow yourself, don't think, oh, I'm a large business, I'm from Nigeria, we're the largest country in Africa. Yeah, we are. But being humble enough to understand people's different context, how they see you, how they respond to the way you do, actually reducing, like, so for example, those of us that are Nigerians, we are boisterous, we speak very loudly. Things like that sometimes, upset people from other parts of Africa. So even just like making sure you understand how you are dressed, making sure that you understand, how you're speaking, having that cultural competency and having the humility to learn it is so important. I try to, become different people when I enter different markets. So if I'm visiting Ethiopia today, I become an Ethiopian woman. I actually have myself wearing all the national dresses of every country where we operate because I want them to feel like I'm one of theirs, right? To feel like I'm a generalized African citizen instead of a specific citizen of a country. So having that cultural competency allows you to build trust with your market and allows the market to feel like they actually own a part of your business and that the business is actually a localized business. So I think that is really important, including giving shares of your business to local people, either strategic people or even just like your own employees and your own team members. Now, shifting a little bit to the regulatory environment, AfCFTA, AfCFTA has enormous promise. And, many of us that are founders in this world, we're really excited. We're really optimistic about what this organization and what this institution means to us. Ultimately, we need to be able to measure the success of this free trade environment in the way that it actually changes the reality of our operations and how not just symbolically changes our operations, but actually in real time changes how we operate. We really need to make sure that the licensing environment across borders are, resolved, right? If I already have an excellent process, locally in Nigeria, I should not have to create new licensing, new orders in order to operate even in West Africa or the rest of the sub-Saharan Africa, right? Secondly, a free trade environment also has to make sure that there is free capital available, right, for companies that want to scale. So, fundraising is one of the most brutal things that a company does. And if we have those partnerships that unlock capital for us, that makes us stronger as a business. Thirdly, we hope that this trade, it is my hope and my wish that this, new paradigm of building iconic African businesses allows every company that is started within the borders of Africa, to feel and operate like a homegrown business in any country that is African, right? For us, that means that integration becomes possible the moment you start. If you start a company in Sierra Leone, you should be able to execute your company in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, in Mali, right? If you start a company in Nigeria, this new paradigm becomes possible when you can operate like across all this entire, across the continent with just the place where you started without needing to build new businesses. This environment must figure out, strategic opportunity for companies, right? As Africa, Africa getting to scale, companies getting to scale, will not come from like national success stories. LifeBank will not get to scale and become that iconic companies that we're trying to be if we're just a Nigerian success story. We want to be a success story, of course, in Nigeria, our home, but we also want to be successful in Kenya and in Ethiopia and to be celebrated across the entire continent. Infrastructure is important. Infrastructure creates that consistency. So, moving us away from fragmentation to moving us to coordination, right? Data, payments, services, all of this must be interoperable. And these are the opportunities that I think this new institution has to unlock value for Africa. For Africa to be successful, Africa must create large businesses. And not only just large businesses, these large businesses must be connected across the entire continent. It is so essential. And I think we finally have an opportunity. We finally have an institution whose entire reason for being is to unlock this. For me, my final takeaway is that expansion is not ambition. Expansion is architecture, right? Of course, it's driven by ambition, but expansion ultimately is building the architecture for scale, right? For me, cross-border growth rewards companies that are designed for uncertainty, but that have the institutional capacity and the flexibility to meet the moment. If your systems cannot withstand volatility, if you cannot react in the most appropriate way, systemic way, to a civil war all of a sudden and rebels making their way to the capital of a country where you operate, you are not ready. You must make sure that you've built those systems before you enter. Resilience is absolutely critical. It is critical anywhere, but it's even more critical when you think of expansion. Those are the few lessons that I wanted to share around, what we've learned moving from one country and expanding to 3 other countries across Africa. Thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Temie. This is super, super insightful. This is mega. Now we move on to question and answer. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions because this is practical. And this is, seeing people actually build themselves. It's not just about, what you read in books. It's like people, you've walked the terrain. So me, myself, I have got a lot of questions. As we said, please, if you have more questions, put it into your Slido link. We have a Slido link in the chat box. We have a Slido link in the WhatsApp group, and she's going to pick it up from here. So please, the tech team, can you help us put up the questions asked so Temie can jump on them? Thank you.
Shay, I'm sorry that I'm interrupting here. It's Abubakar. Shay?
That's fine, please.
I said, let me just quickly use this opportunity to appreciate Temie, for that quite very insightful, presentation as well, and it's quite educating too. And it also opened up areas where I see, like I was saying in my presentation, that I see opportunities. I see where we can actually collaborate. I see collaboration here. And Shay, if you don't mind, I'm not saying I'm pitching her marketing or doing anything here, but Temie, please, I think we should there are loads that we can do with you at eTranzact here. There are things that we can scale. We can take this business to another, this platform to another level. And I think if Shay would permit, I would like that we see sometime this week. Are you in Lagos? While we're expecting the questions.
I'm so honored, sir, to connect with you. I would be honored to meet with you. I am not in Lagos currently, but eager to start on Zoom and then meet when I am back in town. Thank you so much.
Excellent. I will share my details with you. Shay, thank you so much for the opportunity and the platform as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so while the team are putting up the question, I think I can read them out to you because I'm privy to them. The first question is, when entering a new market, a new African market, what criteria do you use to decide if it's expansion ready?
That's a great question. So there are three ways that we kind of use it. There are three paradigms, and we actually have a expansion playbook, right? LifeBank we call it new cities or new markets expansion, and we have it's about a 30-page template that we have to fill in and pass over to our board should we decide that this market is interesting. So there are three key things we look out for. One, impact is inherent, right? Meaning that there's a large problem, the community know the problem exists, and it is not a problem we make up. It's actually a real problem. For example, one of the first things people learned about us is we move blood, right? Because that's how we started. Of course, we expanded to consumables, to equipment, to even antivenom, right? That's a topical product in Nigeria today. We started antivenom distribution an entire year ago, right? So although we've expanded all the products we deliver, we've built technology around financial management, we've built technology for, distribution, right? But the first thing we do when we enter a market is, are people desperate for this problem to be solved, right? For example, we go on social media and see like how many people are saying, I need blood, I need blood, I need blood. How many people are saying, oxygen is not available in this hospital, right? So we look at it and we actually go into the market, we do surveys to understand, is there a problem that our own structure, our coordination system can solve? That's the first thing that we look at. If the problem exists, right, and we see that it is clear, then we go to the next section of the new country playbook, right? So in the next section, what we then do is, the next section is to figure out, is the market large enough, right? If we enter, how many care centers exist in this country, right? How many care centers, how many of them are private, how many of them are government? What is the modality of expansion? Then if there's a sizable enough market, we essentially enter with our commercial product. If the market is not sizable, right? For example, Sierra Leone doesn't have a massive healthcare market. The population is smaller, the purchasing power is impacted. So it's a bit different. We now say, okay, if we want to still enter a market where the problem is very clear and is very large, and the market is not large enough, we don't enter with our commercial system, we enter with a partnership with a local governmental organization, right? So if an NGO is existing there, they have the financial capacity to host us, we then enter the markets using that. For example, we enter Sierra Leone in a partnership with a global NGO who could host our services, right? But if the market is there, then we enter with our commercial system, right? And then the final thing is, is the regulatory environment available for us to enter, right? There'll be markets that are large, that, it's commercially viable, the problem exists there, but the regulatory environment is a nightmare, and we just, we pass on those markets, right? So those are the sort of again, it is contained in this expansion playbook. It has three sections. First, does the problem exist? The second one, do you have a large enough market? And then the third one is it open? Is that market open for you to actually be successful? Over.
Thank you very much, Temie. I think the questions are now on the screen, so you might be able to read them yourself.
Okay.
I think the next question. Yeah.
So the next question says, what was the most unexpected barrier you faced when scaling outside your home market? Oh my God. So there are many barriers, and I think I've shared a little bit. The one that was mostly unexpected was the opinion people have of Nigerians, right? I felt like I understood it, but I didn't understand it in a very innate way. And I didn't expect that I was when I'm talking to people with my name and my accent and the way that I, talk, and the way that I just, the way we are, as, people, I didn't know that like there was like a map of Nigeria or like a flag of Nigeria on my face. People actually respond to us with their own opinion of Nigerianness, right? And the preconceived notion of what it means to be a Nigerian is very, very widespread. And that was very unexpected for me, right? So, when that happened, I needed to sort of like meet the moment for them to create a system where people feel like I am of that country instead of, a foreigner. And to be honest, the opinion is not always negative, right? There are places where they love Nigerians. They think we're awesome. And there are places where absolutely not, right? So you have to be aware of that as you expand. And it was completely unexpected for me. The next question is, health tech often depends on logistics and infrastructure. How you build reliable system environments with weak supply chains. That's why we're here, right? That's our entire, reason for being. Essentially, in a disorganized system where lives are at stake, coordination becomes really key. And what we've been able to build is build a tech stack to ensure coordination happens, right? So for example, I'm sure you guys have heard of this. There's a famous drone company that's operating in Africa. What we do is a bit different. We're not, a specific distribution. We don't use a specific tool. We are, multimodal. In parts of the world, we have to deliver with trucks. In other parts of the world, we have to deliver with boats, right? So building that multimodal infrastructure that is powered by our technology make it much easier and faster to do. The next question I see here is, how do you localize your operating model without losing efficiency or brand consistency? Oh, this is hard. This is such a fantastic question. So you localize your operating model by being flexible, by understanding what the market is wanting. For example, I'll give you a real life example. When we launched in Kenya, we launched with every single service that was available in Nigeria. But the market and the regulatory environment became really, really tough around blood distribution, right? So we were flexible. We essentially, decided to move away from that, right? And no longer offer blood distribution and blood coordination in Kenya. But we're able to offer other services, right? So it's still the same technology, it's still the same rail, it's still the same coordination infrastructure, but the difference now is that one product that there is very sensitive in terms of the regulatory environment is removed for specific market. So people go to, like, for example, our platform for care centers is NEV. So if you go to nev.lifebankcares.com, it asks you which country. So depending on which country you are in, different services is populated for your account, right? So that's how we sort of like it's the same technology, but basically localized for what the market will allow. Next question is, how long should founders realistically prepare for regulatory approval cycles in health tech? Oh my, there's no timeline. There is no timeline. I can't tell you that there's a specific timeline. There are permissions that we have spent 7 years attempting to receive that we are still not received till today, right? And we're still hitting our head on it. 7 years. So for me, there is no time. There's no timeline. If the regulatory approval is required, you just continue to hit your head. Just continue to hit your head. Just continue to hit your head. One day it will happen. When if we ever get this particular permission, I'm going to blast it everywhere that is blastable, because I've spent 7 years patiently waiting for us to get this permission. So there is no and sometimes it's just one day, right? It's 1 day or 7 years, it depends. The next question is, did you expand with ground funding, revenue partnerships, or a hybrid model? LifeBank is flexible in terms of the capital we can absorb. We have absorbed purely grant funding. We have absorbed, contracts from major international organizations. We make our own money. We're like our operations, it has its own profit. We partner with governments. Governments pay us for services, even in Nigeria, right, for technology that we deploy. So we're very flexible in terms of how we make money and where the revenue and the capital comes from. We have, we can use bank loan as capital. We can use different things as, as capital. So that is also already, I hope that answers your question. Local partners when entering a new country. Yeah, so for local partners is, does this person have something that I don't have, right? Is the way that they do, right? If they have tech and I have tech, what are we partnering on, right? If I have tech, but they have local distribution, or they have government down pat, or they are, they are a service provider already, and they already have a market, then it becomes clear that there is like a symbiotic partnership, right? But if that is not, if we're the same, then we're just gonna bump into each other and it's not useful. So for those kind of scenario, then an acquisition or a merger is better than a partnership. All right. So if we're starting LifeBank today, what would you do differently to scale faster across Africa? Oof. I don't know that you can scale faster, right? To be honest, I don't think it's possible. I think you have to scale, but it is inherently slower. If I was starting differently, I think I'd raise more capital outright, right? Because that allows you to scale faster and fail in a still acceptable environment. At one point, do you know your model was financially scalable beyond pilot programs? I think I knew by the time we got Lagos figured out, right? So we started, about 11 years ago, we started the business in Lagos. And by the time Lagos, we had figured out how to operate well in Lagos. Lagos is a tough market for a technology and a distribution business. I felt like, okay, we can expand within Nigeria first. Then once we expanded within Nigeria, then it became clear that we could do it outside Nigeria as well. So the next question is, what was the first step you took when you first expanded to a new region? Once we've the first thing is, of course, build out this playbook, get board approval on the playbook. After that, you need to hire your first country lead. We used to call it country CEO. Now it's, head of sales, different name, but the person who will be your anchor in executing the expansion. And then for me, after you find that person, I had to travel to Ethiopia at least 5 times. I had to travel to Kenya multiple times. And, for me, it is find that anchor person that will help your business grow in that market. And then secondly, get a good lawyer. You will need that. So the last question is, thank you so much, Hafsat. On personal mentorship sessions. Not right now. I have to be honest, I'm busy building. Every single hour is accounted for. Every single minute is accounted for. So I unfortunately cannot offer mentorship right now, but if you want to speak, I'm happy to speak with you on a one-on-one basis. Over.
Thank you very much, Temie. This is a masterclass. I can guarantee that. We'll circulate your presentation to attendees, and I'm sure they might still reach out to you. I'm sure a lot of people are also exploring partnerships. This is the kind of partnerships we look forward to, and we're really grateful for you making our time for today. Now, as we wrap up here are the key takeaways. Expansion is not a growth hack. It's a structured decision. Each sector has its own playbook, its own regulatory rhythm, its own partnership logic, but the companies that succeed across Africa share one thing in common. They prepare before they scale. If today sharpened your thinking around how to expand, then we've done our job. So remember, participation in this session connects directly to the eligibility for the deep fast-track opportunity designed to position digital ventures for AfCFTA and global markets. Before we sign off, as I said, thank you to our supporting partners, eTranzact PLC, Champs Holding Company PLC, Sweet Fusion, the National Information Technology Development Agency, and a big thank you to all our speakers. Thank you to everyone who joined live. Keep building, keep scaling. We'll see you in the next session. Over from here.